guys, it is Sunday. And what to my weary eyes, we have an October surprise. So let's ground up this puppy, put it in the paper, and let's jump into the rotation. Now, I had a whole different show planned for this week. I'm not even sure what it was anymore because it's been so long I've forgotten about it.
Something like that.
Pardon it?
Joe Rusan or something like that.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the social equity licenses and the Pigford license and the tokenism license we got going that may or may not get reviewed. But we got hit in the middle of the week with a real surprise coming from the White House. And it was a proclamation that Joe Biden has decided that the campaign promise he made 2 years ago, he's going to go ahead with it. And it really did shock us that he was talking about pardons and talking about descheduling or rescheduling of cannabis. But there's a lot of ins and outs into the wording. And we always say it's, words matter. So we're going to get heavily into this. But let me go ahead and introduce the gang here. I'm Gary Stein, the political director of Suncoast Normal. To my right, your left, is Carlos Jose Armida, who is not only our deputy director, but also the head of the CBD and Mushroom Emporium, first in this country.
Is the CBD and Mushroom Haberdashery.
Haberdashery. Yeah, put it in your hat and smoke it. And up here on the upper right-hand side, we have coming from above the Beltway where he hits him below the Beltway, Christopher Cano, our executive director. And down below, we have a special guest, Jason Beck, who is one of the longest-running entrepreneurs in the cannabis space. And yes, ladies, he is from Los Angeles, but he is bicoastal.
Oh, yeah.
Where are you now? I just learned that's Mar-a-Lago.
That's right.
Yeah.
Broadcasting live from Mar-a-Lago, the Winter White House.
I like that you're claiming to be the highest Republican. You had that on your thing, and I just kind of went with it everywhere.
Yeah,
and I love that.
I know none other.
It's nice to know that you're visiting Trump at his retirement home. But we really got blindsided, so to speak, on this proclamation this last week, and of course we're going to break it down. And I guess one of the first things we want to talk about is the fact that he said that he will go ahead and give full and unadulterated pardons to everybody who has federal possession charges. Now, Jason, you actually had a couple of scuffs with the feds.
Yes.
Would you be included in this?
No.
And why is that?
Well, first of all, no one is included in this because there is no one in federal prison for simple cannabis possession, for starters. There's absolutely zero people that are getting out of jail because of this.
Okay, so where are they?
What do you mean?
The folks who got charged on federally. For instance,
everyone that's been charged on federally in cannabis-related crimes, you're either charged for distribution, transporting, or conspiracy. Those are really the three main things that you would be charged for in regards with a cannabis case on a federal charge. There is absolutely no one serving federal time in federal prison for simple possession of marijuana.
Now, Steve Bloom, who you may know.
I know Steve very well, yeah.
Yeah, he has a friend who apparently was smoking at Independence Hall.
Okay.
Because it's a national...
That's federal land. That's federal property.
Which is federal property.
Correct.
He had a half a joint on him, and he was given 2 years probation. So he's not in jail, but he would be one of the 6,500 that would be included in this because it was a simple possession charge, but it was on federal land.
But again, no one's getting out of prison.
So what you're saying is like nothing's happening?
No, because there is something happening, and I don't want to take away from the goodness of this gesture at all either.
So
but I think everyone is
a smoking Republican, as the highest Republican out there. What does this do from your perspective?
So basically, all this does is it helps the people in DC in regards to cannabis possession.
Mhm.
And it also helps anyone that would get caught on federal land with cannabis, and basically makes it so that the Department of the Interior, who governs the national parks and whatnot, would not be able to say, "Oh yeah, you're arrested for weed on federal land." That to me is all that I really see that it actually does. Besides get everybody all amped up, like, "Oh, this is a great change," da 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 da, da, and you know what I'm saying, keep on beating that drum and whatnot. But there is absolutely no one that's getting out of jail because of this.
Yeah, but the third part where he talks about looking into the situation of descheduling or rescheduling. Now, this was actually set up uh, in 1971 when the deputy surgeon general had said that the attorney general could at any time, if given reasons, could deschedule cannabis and not keep it there. That was one of the reasons for the Schaefer Commission, was to examine whether it actually should be in that spot or not. And it's been all this time where nothing really happened.
Well, you know, that to me is the devil in the details.
Yeah. And we always have to deal with the details, because it's the details that usually kill us in the end. You get us knocked out. Like, for instance, when someone says we're going to look into this, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to do it. And
Well,
that includes the orange guy.
let's break this down a little bit. Let's break this down a little bit. Any rescheduling of any form going to any number would have dire consequences for the cannabis industry overall, and all it would do would hand over the cannabis industry to big pharma. The only thing that can be done that would be meaningful to the cannabis industry is full descheduling. There is no substitute. There is no, "Oh, let's move it to Schedule 1." Right now, President Biden wants to move it to Schedule 3, which at the pawn of that would immediately move it into the hands of big pharma, and would make every single operator illicit operators, in the sense, because that would put the FDA in full governance over cannabis, and they already have Marinol for THC, and they have Epidiolex for CBD. So therefore, they would have drug preclusion on everything, and every single product would be considered unadulterated under the cosmetic the cosmetic food, what the hell is it called?
The Cosmetic Food and Drug Act of 1906.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting proposal, and something we've got to delve in heavily. But we have our first extra guest here to chime in, and this is a Representative Andrew Learned of the 52nd District. Is that correct?
59th, currently running in the 69th.
I got it right in the caption, Andrew. No worries.
Well, they keep
Nobody knows the numbers anyway.
damn numbers.
I'm a member and I don't know the numbers of other people's districts.
I mean, it's amazing how you can stay in one place and all of a sudden change districts. Just because you happen to have a couple extra folks of color in your district, and they say you've got to go someplace else so we can get somebody else in there. I'm not saying that actually happens, but we do tend to have a problem with the redistricting here in Florida.
Absolutely. But, we fight on.
Now, you were one of our champions this last session. You took a number of bills that we did, put them up as amendments, and as Chris and I saw at about midnight, they pretty much got shouted down. I mean, not just being told, "Well, let's think about it," but they actually yelled, "No," as you were talking.
Yeah, I can't believe that. I heard about that, man, and it's ridiculous. Absolutely.
Bipartisan too. That was one of the few bipartisan bills that really got killed in the end. Representative Roach, who you all know, tried to, for lack of a better word, like really roll back and kill the medical marijuana industry in Florida a couple of years in a row with THC cap bills. We had him on board. That's how agreeable the legislation was, as far as reducing costs for patients, really just adding protections for kids, which under this new descheduling regime would have been incredibly helpful. It was a good bipartisan piece of work, and unfortunately it didn't pass, but certainly something I know we want to try again. I will say though, I don't know if anybody on the show's been following it, but Representative Roach lost his house during Hurricane Ian.
Jesus.
He had, I think, 3 or 4 feet of water in his house. So I have not talked to him about this, but certainly, hopefully, by the time the spring comes around, we'll be able to have those conversations.
It's definitely true, Andrew, and I don't know if you remember us coming to your office, and I remember talking to you about this like bipartisan bill that you were presenting with Roach, and basically saying I'm in this hemp industry. I'm kind of skeptical about this bill, and after talking to you, really realizing that this would be the best approach for Florida to really like embrace all sides of the aisle, right? And I really do want to commend you for wanting to work with Republicans in our system. I think that that's a really great thing that you're trying to do. I am interested in hearing what you have to say, not only about what Biden's doing, but of the possibility of the Republicans here in this state working with Biden to change marijuana laws here, because essentially Biden, that's what Biden's trying to do.
Yeah, and I heard some of the conversation before I came on, so totally agree with Jason's broader points. I think where we need the states in order to make this descheduling and the decriminalization part real, right? Like we're going to have to work with our colleagues to do that. I am. I'm a Democrat, right? Like I'm eternally optimistic that they will agree with us and reduce the cost of incarceration. It's a multi-billion-dollar operation that we spend every year housing a lot of nonviolent drug criminals. So we could really do a lot of good for a lot of people. I know a lot of Republicans that use the products, so I do think this is a bipartisan initiative, or at least it should be. But unfortunately, the rhetoric has gotten out ahead of them on this, and it's going to be hard for a lot of people to do this 180 about face in the months ahead. I think that the momentum is there, so we should. But the big elephant in the room is Governor DeSantis is running for president in 2024. He cares more about a Republican primary than he does the politics of our state. And that means a lot of what's going to happen in the next couple of months is going to be more about that national audience than it is about the Florida audience. And I could see that cutting both ways. I could see that saying he wants to get in on this, and I could see him going hard no. So we'll see. But I hope we are able to get this thing done this legislative session.
Is there a path?
Hold on, Gary, let me chime in real quick. Andrew, you said you find it difficult for some of the Republicans to do a 180, but I just want to point out that 12 of the Republicans in the Florida delegation in Congress voted against disaster relief just the week before Hurricane Ian. So, and now they're asking for money for disaster relief. So when it comes to Republicans doing 180s on issues, I don't see it as that hard of a leap for these guys in Congress. But you're right.
You said it, Chris, not me.
When it comes to DeSantis, he's going to have to look at where he's polling, right? Like if the Midwest, those South Dakota Republicans aren't liking his legalization approach, then yeah, he may double down on it. But then if he finds out, hey, maybe the being pro legalization is what he needs. I mean, all in all, what we've seen, whether it's DeSantis or Charlie Crist, is that the guys at the top go where the polls are telling them to go, oftentimes, rather than where their constituents want them to go. And I think that's why we always say, polls are bullshit in a lot of ways, or, watch the pollsters that you hire, because they're just give you a product that you want to see rather than what actually is what the people want. So,
yeah, Chris,
would you know if Vern Buchanan was the positive vote?
Favor, right? Like the polling of this is really clear, and that's across partisan divides. The question is going to be, can he create a wedge within a Republican primary with it? So we're not talking, you don't need a majority opposition by any means. Like he can just find a 10-20% plurality and just hammer that, and it's about how he's going to siphon votes away from former President Trump in the primary, and that's a totally different dynamic that I won't pretend to understand.
I guess DeSantis also has to wonder if he's going to be able to beat what is the name of that guy who's the governor of California?
Oh, Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, the guy with the good hair and the corporate parking space.
Yeah, but see, the Democrats are going to be pushing Pete Buttigieg as their main nominee during this upcoming presidential race, and I don't see DeSantis really going that hard when Trump is going to be coming back and running again for president in 2024 also.
Well, I tell you,
if you think he's going to stand out, I don't think you know the governor.
I mean,
He's been itching for this fight his whole life.
I've known
Ready.
I've known Governor DeSantis back when he was a member in Congress, and so I just know that Trump is the one with the most money in the room, and that is generally how politics go, and so we shall see.
Yeah, we have a race right now where we got. I guess DeSantis has $120 million in his war chest, and Chris has about 8 that he can spend right now. But good news, earned media is free. So cause a whole bunch of trouble, and all of a sudden you get a whole bunch of free advertising. And that's pretty much the way that Trump ran the first election. He had more earned media than paid media at one point in time. So I guess you could take a page from that book.
100%. 100%, Gary.
Andrew, is there a path in the state legislature to move forward and follow the lead that Biden had put out towards the states to go ahead and get the full pardons, as opposed to just incremental decriminalization and things of that sort?
I think there's a path. I think that path goes again through Governor DeSantis, right? The Republicans have made very clear they are just going to defer to leadership and what they're told, and that direction is going to come from the governor's office for them. I do think, in fact, I know there's the votes in the chamber if you just ask people on the merits, but the reality is that's not the way they're going to cast that vote. They're going to go through leadership. It's going to be a whipped vote, and that means you need the governor in order to get it done. And that's just the reality of Republican politics in Florida today, right? Like, they cannot get out ahead on anything. And I would challenge anyone to find any Republican running anywhere in the state right now and find an issue where there is disagreement with them and their leadership. The reality is the Democrats, we fight with our leadership on every issue. We are not clear on anything. We are all voting our conscience on every vote. I think that's the way most people would want their representatives to be. But at the same time, that's not what happens on the Republican side. They are a uniform bloc. And frankly, that makes them hard to beat if they decide that they're going to be against this.
So you're saying the Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line. Is that right?
Something like that.
That was cute. Can I ask you a question, Representative?
That's why I'm here.
So I like Gary's question, but I kind of want to pose it in a different manner. President Biden recently called on all governors to enact a sense of pardoning people for unjust cannabis crimes for a number of years. Let's just go back 10, 20 years, whatever. How much do you think influence is going to influence Governor DeSantis to do something like that coming from Joe Biden?
None. The calculus I think he's going to make is about, like I said, that Republican primary for president against former President Trump, right? If this is a wedge that he can see is creating an issue and siphoning some votes off, maybe he does it. Or he takes the opposite and maybe he doesn't, right? But it's going to be about that Republican primary. It has nothing to do with Florida politics at all. Which is sad, right? Because that's the problem with like our state today, right? Like, we are using our state's politics as a launch pad for Republican presidential primaries instead of talking to the fact that 49% of the state of Florida doesn't agree with it, right? And we are a very purple place. There's a lot of disagreement. It's a dynamic state. And these votes these guys have taken like against hurricane relief and such, like, those are going to haunt them. It's going to haunt them, but it doesn't matter because, again, these Republican primaries are more important than fighting for working people in Florida, which is what's holding our state back.
At least our senators, I think, split on the bill to for disaster relief. I think Rubio voted against it, and Rick Scott is actually pushing for an extra session to go ahead and look into it again.
Rick Scott voted against it. Marco Rubio didn't bother to show up. So, frankly, both of them are full of shit, in my opinion.
Jason, I gotta say, I see you in the corner there, smoking your joint, and wearing that badge as the highest Republican proudly. And I mean, we're not talking very favorably about Republicans right now. And quite honestly, like
We have thick skin. We have thick skin, Carlos. We can take the
before
good
we
with the
went
bad.
live, I actually said something to you where I said, sometimes I wish I was a Republican. But like, it's conversations like these where like really it seems unethical to be Republican. To be honest with you, like do you have any
Well,
comments?
I think
about what we're
I think you
saying?
have to, and I don't know enough of what's going on internally within Florida politics in regards to that, but I'm willing to bet there's some type of outer lay reason. And let me just give you kind of another example. Recently, a number of Republicans voted against a veterans bill, right? I think you guys all remember this,
The
and
burning pit.
correct. And so the reason the reason that Republicans did that is because they know that they're going to control the government in the next session. And so why give the Democrats a win when we can just pass it, kick the can down the road, and just pass it in the next session when we'll get credit for the win?
So the veterans are going to die, but
Thank you,
I guess that's
Andrew. Thank you, Representative, for saying that.
I didn't
Carlos
I didn't say it was right. I'm just giving you the thought process and the reasoning.
So back to Carlos's point, how unethical is that?
Let's.
Well,
go
I mean, Democrats
let's
do
go
a lot
back.
of the same thing, but just in different ways, in a number of different circumstances.
Well, let's simplify things here a little bit. Let's remember why we're here. Let's not let this conversation.
Exactly. I don't think we're here to battle between which side is.
We're here about cannabis reform, and I propose a question to Rep. Learned earlier. I'll propose the same question to you, Jason. What is the possibility of DeSantis doing something ethically and working with Democrats to legalize cannabis? Is there like this is obviously something that you want. Why are you still on his side, even though he's not doing the right thing and giving it to you? And before you answer, you want this because you yourself are ethical. Like I'm
Correct.
not saying Republicans are unethical, right?
Yes.
I'm just saying that's what it sounds like. You know,
my thing is this is that you can't always make the bad the enemy of the good, and anyone that understands politics should always know that. And with me being the highest Republican and whatnot, I do a lot of outreach and a lot of major conversations with a lot of different Republicans that normally couldn't have that kind of conversation with another individual. Like just for an instance, I can touch on a number of different things. I was adopted. I wasn't supposed to live at birth. I was born with cerebral palsy, and cannabis truly helps me to alleviate a lot of the symptoms and things that happen, and as a result of having cerebral palsy, and actually makes me a productive member of society. So I can hammer a number of different issues in a number of different ways, and really have that kind of engagement and follow through, and really kind of be that person to change the minds of these individuals, and so that's what really my focus is to be the adult in the room and show it from a logical perspective.
Wonderful. Just the fact that you're sitting where you are, listening us to talk the way we're talking, means that
like I said, I can take it. I can take the abuse. I'm totally fine with it.
But why are we still thinking that DeSantis can do something? Are you under the impression that Republicans are going to legalize cannabis and
no no I don't see how. I mean, Gary, that bill, that press release you sent me, that was from a year ago. That wasn't from just yesterday, was it?
Which was the Brandis bill that was 2020.
Yeah, in 2020, exactly. So is anyone championing this type of legislation in the legislature right now?
In the state legislature?
Correct.
I think
because you have Kim Rivers that's put together a voter initiative that's a single issue topic. You have a number of advocates that are not going to support this at all in the ballot box, and she's out trying to raise money to garner other support, and it's getting portrayed in the public as strictly a MSO corporate takeover of Florida cannabis bill. And so I mean, we've had those kinds of things happen in California, and those things not pass.
Given from the conversation that we were just having, I don't think that's the case. I think Democrats would be willing to work with Republicans if it's the right thing to do.
Man, you're talking to one who just did.
I think you're right about that. I mean, I know Matt Gaetz is a good friend of mine, and he's from your state, and I know he's told me straight up, I'm willing to work with anyone that's willing to work with me on this issue. Like, I don't care about political party in regards to that, and so that's kind of where the approach that I take that from.
And Gates and Darren Soto co-sponsored a bill to deschedule cannabis or reschedule cannabis. I think it was about 2 years ago, maybe more. And of course, it went nowhere. But it was a bipartisan effort over there in D.C., which was good to see, I suppose. Although Gates, in and of himself, can't pull up enough votes and have everybody follow him at this point in time.
But he did crush his primary.
Yeah,
well,
that's not too hard to do in Pensacola.
What you were saying earlier, though, about kicking the can down the road, Jason, for victories, you're absolutely right. The Democrats have done that same thing in Congress. Senator Schumer has essentially kicked the can down the road on legalization in the Senate because he wants to encourage people to turn out and vote for Democrats to hold the Senate to actually get anything done when it comes to legalization. The problem is that if the Democrats lose the House and they don't hold on to both chambers, then legalization is done for the rest of the Biden administration.
Well, first of all, if you think legalization is going to happen under the Biden administration, who is the author of the '94 crime bill, I mean, it has always been a cannabis prohibitionist. You are dead wrong if you think that legalization is ever going to happen under his watch.
Well, I actually agree with that because of the fact that we had Eleanor Holmes Norton on a couple months ago, and we asked her, what is your major block to getting DC legalized? And she said, it's Biden. The head writer was all set up, and he was the one who shot it down.
That was all before he just passed a nationwide decriminalization and expungement and called for descheduling, right? Like, he very publicly just reversed that course. So all of the thinking.
Hold on, who called for descheduling? Who called for descheduling? Who called for descheduling?
Biden.
Biden did not call for descheduling at all whatsoever.
You can get
no.
into
He called for a firm.
Very publicly.
He did not call for descheduling. That is not true at all. That is 100% fake news.
Okay. He called for the. He called for the. Looking into the
he called to put a committee together to look into cannabis about being rescheduled. He was very clear with that language because what President Biden wants is for cannabis to go to Schedule 3, which immediately at that point cannabis industry is done and is immediately handed over to the pharmaceutical industry.
Whoa, Jason, you can't. First off, you're not in the morning briefing, so I don't know where you can say he wants that specifically. What I can say is this much, and what Andrew said, and what Republicans you all constantly say about Biden is that he's confused, he doesn't know where he's going. I'm confused right now on the policies in the sense, like, you're right, he did sponsor the '94 crime bill, but here he is, calling on folks to forgive marijuana pardons and such. Essentially, it's him trying to fix his past screw ups. And we can all see that because, as you said before, there's an election coming up. Charlie Crist is the same thing. Charlie Crist came on this show and said he's for growing as many plants as you want. That's the same chain gang Charlie that we all remember from the early 2000s. So I think the fact is that there is this desire from at least on the left that when these folks have been on the wrong side of an issue, that they're now trying to correct it. And in some ways,
but there's so much more that he could do to actually correct it instead of just throwing out this little blanket message that makes everybody feel good and does absolutely nothing.
Well, one thing I can say this much: the people of DC who
Luke Scaramazzo, for one, okay, there's numbers of nonviolent cannabis offenders that he could release and done this with a stroke of a pen and had to be done and got major credit, and I would be cheering it on 100%. And I'm not trying to take away from the goodness of what the president did, because I do think that it is a positive step forward, so I don't want people to misinterpret my message. But at the same time, it's a blanket statement. It's not doing anything.
Okay, let's not forget that
it's not doing anything. Then what's good about it?
What's good about it is that the president is making it an issue. He mentioned it. That is amazing. That is amazing.
And
It's
anyone
twofold.
convicted under DC's drug laws, since the district is not a
Correct.
state, are technically considered federal charges. So 6,500 people who were convicted between 92 and 2021 will have their civil disabilities removed. So you're right. This doesn't
Yes, that
expunge the
yes.
record, but it allows them to get housing. It allows them to get jobs.
I think that's a fantastic thing. I think that's a fantastic thing. I'm not
Yeah.
taking away from that. I think that's
Yeah.
fabulous. But how it's being portrayed is like we're letting people out of jail, and that's not what it is.
But it is a start. It is a way. I think he basically threw a bone to all the governors out there, both Republican and Democrat, to move the state policies forward. And that's what I'm hoping to see. What we see some kind of bipartisan approach. I mean, if people were able to work with Rohrabacher, despite all of his other ideas, then I think we can get some kind of bipartisan support going forward with this.
I hope so, and I would totally support some bipartisan support.
Rise out of this is Republican states ran by Republican governors who are not going to consider this just because it came from Biden. I think that's the biggest issue here.
Well, you know who I think really needs to take the lead on this, and I think would be the perfect person to do this because of his presidential aspirations as well, is Gavin Newsom here in California. And I think he would be the perfect person to take the lead on this. California is, the largest economy in the nation, and it would signify and start a trigger effect that would happen in all of these other states.
And
So
you have the prop situation over there that we don't have. It makes things a lot easier for citizens to get their word across. I think as far as True Leaves bill is concerned, I think it's 4 years too late, because there have been bills that have been put through on our legislature that have made it nearly impossible for citizen initiatives to go forward. Like, for instance, we have to have.
Hold on, you think it's 4 years too late?
Yeah, because they've had the chance to go ahead and put through these bills that, for instance, require practically 1 million signatures.
I think it's 2 years too early. Because if you look at stats, and you will love this, Representative Leonard, you will love this. Cannabis initiatives actually show a higher Democratic turnout in elections.
Yeah, we have more registered Republicans than we do in Democrats in this state. Yet, so many Republicans continue to win, and they've been in control of the legislature for how long, Andy?
Since 96.
30 years. Yeah. This entire conversation, like, it's funny we're doing this while people are getting stoned, right? Because this is what people do, right? They get high and they just debate the politics of the shit, and we forget about the fact that this is something that's going to help real people's lives. Nobody cares that we're going to purposely delay this 2 years because it's going to get a better electoral outcome in a general election. Screw that. There are people suffering today.
Hold on. What happened?
Paying too much for their weed today.
What about Cory Gardner doing the same thing?
And like the rest of it is just fucking noise. That's honestly like what this is.
Cory Gardner and Chuck Schumer did the same thing with safe banking.
Year after year after year. Oh, we should wait another year because the politics is going to be better. Screw it. It's a good policy. We should do it now. And we should do it more than we're already doing. We should go loud and we should go proud.
Cory Gardner and has grandstanded on safe banking, say I'm not going to allow this bill.
I don't give a shit. This is
but I'm saying it happens on both sides. I'm saying it happens on both sides. You can't say, only this party does it. Both parties do it.
You're doing it right now. This has been the last 10 minutes. Like, we're still talking about it. Like, if you got the votes and it's a good policy, then make America a better place. That's what we're about.
I'm 100% with that, Andrew. I'm 100% with that.
And I'm looking forward to seeing a legalization and expungement bill with a bipartisan support and bipartisan sponsorship coming to Florida at a theater near you.
Well, Gary, I think what we're going to see in Florida in the next 2 years is more than likely a glitch bill that can help correct our medical program. I mean, if we can open up the books and the statutes, expand qualifying conditions, and put in employment protections, put in those medical protections that you and I have so advocated for, and address, some of these other issues like the current allotments. I've had how many,
yes.
I can't tell you how many patients call me this week pissed off that they can only get 2 joints when they walk into a dispensary now. And that's what they got to stick with for the whole day. And that's a major issue.
All that does is fuel the illicit market. That's all that does.
Yeah, and Jason, you said earlier, DeSantis got to win and get rid of this folkable flower. But what have you done for me lately? Because you've had 4 years to help us push, employment protections, but he allowed Roach and them to dominate the conversation with THC caps. And I think, like Andrew said earlier, the Representative Learned said, nothing moves in Florida's GOP unless the governor's on the board. It is a very pyramidal structure. So to me, the failings of our medical marijuana system, I have to put on Ron DeSantis and I have to put on the Florida GOP because they're the only ones who have the power to change it. Andrew's in the back in a minority. They can't do jack shit for us. And he has, if you're a minority, you got two options. You can build bridges or you can throw grenades. Andrew, likes to build bridges.
I have a question. I have a question for you, Kano.
Yeah.
How many of the companies in Florida are lobbying to keep it that way?
Most of them.
That's a very good point.
Then that's the exact reason why. It's not on the GOP or anyone. It's because they're being lobbied to keep it that way.
We're doing the opposite. We're lobbying too, but you're right. They can write bigger checks. The MMTCs have way bigger pocketbooks than Suncoast Normal does.
Exactly.
I mean, it is amazing that oftentimes elections are based on how much the candidates are able to raise prior to the election for their.
It's amazing where all this money comes from, right?
Well, it's amazing where it comes from, and I gotta tell you, you brought up one of my nemesis the other day. I went on your show, Kevin Sabet.
Yes, Kevin Sabet. Well, I believe that I believe that you always have to see what the opposition is doing in the time that everyone is cheering, because otherwise you're going to get caught off guard, and you have to see what they're saying and understand what they're trying to get across.
Well, one conversation I had with him, he said, we have to give this to the pharmaceutical industry in molecule by molecule so they can create safe products. And I said, do you understand the concept of boof?
Oh, man. What did he say?
He said, I have never heard that word before.
Well,
it was probably those gummies that you were passing around at the last event where you actually left the entire baggie behind, which is true, by the way.
Find me a prohibitionist, right? That's an actual a user that has smoked cannabis and it says
they wouldn't be a prohibitionist then, Kano.
Exactly, Jason. And I think that's the main issue that we see. I mean, 100 million Americans have utilized cannabis. There's at least 60 million that utilize it, regularly. And the fact, and those are probably underreported numbers, because the government came to me with a survey and said, "Do you smoke?" No.
Yeah, so, you're not gonna tell them.
It's I think the only person you probably tell is your doctor. Do you smoke? Smoke what? That's always the question.
Andrew, is there any buzz in the legislature right now as to, after the election, everything calms down, what might actually move this next session? Because I'm curious, or is it just a matter of we have to wait for all the elections to be over, even though, quite frankly, a lot of them are already swinging in the direction of the winners at this moment in time?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't heard anything really specific other than a couple like one-off conversations I've had with individual Republicans that aren't in leadership on this issue. So that means nothing, because they're going to do what they're told. But I will say, you guys talked about a glitch bill earlier. Absolutely. We're going to have to come back. We're going to have to fix something. What I tried to do in the bipartisan bill we ran last year was, to the point you guys made, like, bring the two sides together on an issue. And in this particular context, like, you're going to have MMTCs aligned with activists. And that's going to create some synergy because we need it, right? Like, a lot of the rules around MMTCs are going to hold them back in a now potential future recreational market, which is certainly what they see this as an indication of where we're going. So we're going to start getting the wheels in order. And a lot of Republicans are going to start trying to put up new roadblocks, right? Like, you could see a world where they're going to have to create some sort of recreational cap. They're going to have to start doing things like we negotiated last year in 679. Like, those were things we knew were likely to come. We wanted to create a glide path to get us there, because full, descheduling, or to Jason's point, rescheduling, whatever you want to call it. Like, you're going to have to create
deschedule
new
or
protections
bust.
for kids. We're going to have to put new protections around like where you can smoke. I don't think a lot of people want this stuff in schools, for example. So there's tons of new regulation that's going to have to happen to make this a safe and smooth transition. And all of that should be done in a bipartisan way.
Well, Representative, let me say this much, that there is something in regards to the legitimacy of cannabis as legitimate medicine, to where it should not be utilized as a weapon against people who use it. So we need to change our child welfare laws in this state. People should not be losing their kids or going to jail because they're cannabis users. Cannabis use should not be utilized someone as a weapon, in any shape or form, whether it's their job or their livelihoods or their medical treatment. And I think that's definitely one of the main things that we got to address in changing the culture and changing how statutes, treat people.
Well, and you said it, because it is an interesting paradigm shift that we have to make as a state, right? Because we have purposefully, over the last few years, viewed marijuana as medicine, which is exactly what you said. That's why we don't tax it, right? That's why we put it in this MMTC construct, because we say this is a medicine product. This is not something that you should be using to go get high. I'm not saying this is what the state says, right? But in a reschedule, deschedule, whatever you want to call it, that shift starts to change. And this continues to be medicine for some people, but it's also just like your God-given right as an American to be free and go do what you want to do to your own body, right? So why we do that with Delta 8, for example, and we don't do that for cannabis continues to defy me, because, in America, in a free country, the burden of proof should be on why you should regulate something, not on why you should why it should be unregulated, right? So this should default to being just an adult product that anybody can use. Now, should we continue to have safeguards for people who use it as medicine? Should they get, lower taxes, for example, because this is something that they need for whatever disease that they're dealing with? Yes, of course, right? Like, I ran the bill for free cards for veterans with PTSD, for example, right? Like, that stuff should continue to happen. That said, we need to create this new set of rules for all the new users on the recreational side, because, it's a free country. You should be able to use it. But that still means that we have to create new safeguards for how we're going to do that, how we're going to keep our kids safe. And no reasonable people are against those sort of protections. Right?
Why not just have
That's
a
a whole
reasonable
new paradigm that we got to create.
Why not just have a
So,
common sense approach of treat it like a cigarette, and anywhere you can smoke a cigarette, you can smoke cannabis, and that's it?
Well, the
Or New York.
just right off the top, like, most of those rules are local,
New York.
right? So you'd have to write thousands across the entire state. Like, it's just, this is my point. Like,
Well,
this
but
is
the
going to be a
state could just
process.
come
It's
out
going
as a
to take
blanket
work.
statement and say,
There's
if
nothing
you don't
that's
have
going to
anything on the
happen
books,
automatically.
right? Couldn't the state just come out and say, as a blanket statement, say, hey, unless you have something on the books, this is how it is?
They could. They
Okay.
won't.
All right.
They
So there could be, that's what I'm saying. There could be a common sense approach done. Okay. But again, like, common sense does not win.
It's cute how often you argue against the logic of your own party, but I hear you.
Rep. Lenin,
I argue for logic in general.
with the bill that you proposed,
Party logic is an oxymoron.
with the bill that you proposed last term, that was this compromise that with Spencer Roach, it really seemed like the new 10% caps was going to be Delta 8. You mentioned Delta 8 earlier. As you know, I sell Delta 8. I'll preemphasize this question by saying you can totally make Delta 8 illegal to make cannabis illegal. I'm totally down with that. But what do you think in the world of legalization coming? Does hemp fit in it, or do you think that's going to be the compromise? We get rid of hemp and we legalize marijuana. What are we doing?
No, I think what we do is we let the markets do their thing, right? And absolutely no criticism of Delta 8, but like, in a world where you can go get, unregulated cannabis or the Delta 8 synthetic product, I think most people are going to default to the cannabis, right? At least that was my experience in college from what I heard. So,
I have a question. What is the difference Representative, between cannabis and hemp?
Jason, you're talking to the guy who tried to make that case 1,000 times on the floor, right? Like, absolutely.
I'm just saying,
I mean,
under the
they are
Controlled Substances
completely-
Act,
One, we don't even have a prohibition against 8-year-olds buying at a gas station, and the other one, we have a complete lockdown, inability to do any
it's
legislation.
so
that even touches
ridiculous.
it. So
It's totally ridiculous.
absolutely,
Yeah.
we should be fixing this. But in the fix that I would prefer to see is you let the market speak for itself, right? Like, you deregulate, you make this stuff legal, and then you let competition do what competition does, right?
Couldn't one
It-
argue, Representative, that that basically, since you've already tried the experiment with hemp and nothing's happened, that you could just let the cannabis market operate in the same way? Because you
sorry,
have Delta
I don't think
8
I'm
being
understanding what you're saying.
because you have Delta 8 being sold everywhere. That is a psychoactive compound, basically very similar to THC, and that's being sold everywhere on the market space in the open air. Just like you said, 8-year-olds can go into gas stations and pick it up. And so my point is that why don't we just treat THC the same way that, because there hasn't been a major health crisis from this happening yet.
I mean, I agree. The first line of my cannabis policy on my website is "Smoke it if you got it." Like,
Word the fuck up.
Now,
Hey.
now just so you know, Andy, we are going to bring you a bill that talks about
Here.
protections for parents who smoke cannabis, so the kids don't get taken away. And that I find is an issue that is definitely had not been breached in a long time.
That kind of goes into the question that I'm trying to, and I think Jason's gonna really enjoy this question. I really want to ask you, Andrew, in order to legalize in Florida, we're going to have to work with Republicans. I think that's an inevitability, right? How does that compromise look?
I think it looks very similar to what we did in 679, because that bill, while it didn't move, was taken seriously, like, behind closed doors, right? Like, people were definitely talking about it. And that compromise was basically, let's add protections for children. Let's add protections for, schools and places where you have to create these new restrictions. And in creating the new restrictions, you get the compromise on removing restrictions on the other side, right? Because otherwise, you've got people that would lock down, Democrats who would lock down and be like, I'm not going to add all these new restrictions if you're not giving me something else, and vice versa from them. So, like, we do have to come together on this, and meeting in the middle makes the most sense, right? So I think, and look, protections against kids is a bipartisan issue. Like, nobody is going to be against stuff like that. It's just a matter of, like, you really do have to do one to get the other.
And that's funny, actually, hearing Jason talking earlier about how, like, Delta 8's proof that we just should sell it wherever, like, smoke it if you got it. And, like, it's just interesting that would be the compromise for, like, there's so many different Republicans, like, there's so many different liberals out there. And I think it's just interesting that it seems Jason would agree that we should just have this free open market.
Well, Delta 8's also a good example of, in the absence of government, like, the industry has done a good job, right? Like, Carlos, both of y'all are great examples of people. Like, most reputable stores are not letting 8-year-olds come in and buy this stuff, right? Like,
I want to know.
but there is no law that says they can't, right? Like, there is nobody out there who actually is preventing it. It's just that companies are being responsible on their own merits. Now, are there, people that I'm sure are skating those laws? Yes, absolutely. That's the role of the government, is to step in and stop those bad actors. But at the same time, like, this really is something where we can all agree and we can do this together. I don't think there's a Republican vote or a Democratic vote that would be different. The question is whether House leadership and whether the governor is going to be willing to even entertain the conversation. And that is an unknown, right? Because it is entirely possible that they would rather talk about migrant flights to Martha's Vineyard and make this fight a referendum about stuff like that than they do about solving real problems in the state. And, for my time in the House, it has been very clear they would rather wage those out-of-state culture wars than actually improving the lives of everyday Floridians. So,
But we are trying to help Texas deal with their immigrant problem, which is nice of us, isn't it? Of course, we started one in New York City, but that's besides the point.
yeah.
Well, I don't think that Senator Brandis, who is our libertarian Republican senator, who has been our champion for so many years and is now terming out, is going to be on with us today. So on his behalf, I would just say that we can get bills in the legislature. You might not always get the votes you want. You might not even get out of committee. But I think at least starting the conversation is a way to start.
Well, and as a Democrat with an A rating from the Libertarian Americans for Prosperity, I agree.
We love
the
those
world
people.
is upside down.
That it is. That it is. And we're just trying to make it a better place.
So, Andrew, you've got your election coming up in the general. Hopefully, you're cruising to the finish line with a couple of bucks left in your pocket.
There is nothing cruising about it. I was the closest race in the state 2 years ago. I was gerrymandered even redder. This time, it is going to be a decision by a couple dozen votes, I'm convinced. And the wind that day could change the outcome. So it's going to be close, but we're ready for the fight.
Jason Andrew is a stunning example of how the independents and the liberal thinking Republicans can change a vote, because that was actually a district that Trump won.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew won that district. So that it shows the power of bipartisanship right there. And hopefully we'll see a lot more of that. Jason, I always suggest you guys go ahead and check out his podcast, which is on YouTube, and I subscribed yesterday, I think.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that, Gary.
On High at 9, which is at noon here on the East Coast.
Yes, high noon. We call it high noon on the East Coast.
A great source for news and bizarre opinions.
Yes, 1 full hour of cannabis news, Monday through Friday. America's #1 daily cannabis news show.
If you want, Jason, I can come on your show and talk atheism with you.
Well, there would have to be a news story for you to provide a comment to.
Never for the grace of God, go I, yes.
Dang.
Carlos, trust me, the Catholic Church will have a headline sooner or later by the end of the year for you to come on.
I'm trying to find it on YouTube right now. What is it actually called? High Noon?
High at 9. HIGHAT 9 news. All one word on YouTube. You will find it the fastest. Please subscribe. We really appreciate all your support. Amazing. Thank you so much. Yes. Shout out. Thank you so much.
Mar-a-Lago, by the way.
What's that?
The table behind you?
What's that? That's the living room.
That's the living room. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what my living room looks like too. That's why I don't put it on TV.
Are there any ketchup on the walls?
What's that?
I'm just wondering if there's any ketchup on the walls.
There is no ketchup on the walls because most of the eating is done outside on the patio area.
Oh, I got you.
By the golf course.
This is more like a cocktail reception area.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And then there's one table right behind me up these stairs right here. There's one table right there that you can sit and have lunch at.
Well, guys, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, before we close out, I do want to take us out on this note and talk about the adult use amendment that we see Smart and Safe Florida putting out. And to be clear, folks say, hey, is this a grab from the MSOs? In the actual language, it does allow the legislature to license and essentially take down vertical integration, if you read it closely. The issues with the bill that some folks might have might be the caps on the fact that you can only have 3 ounces of flour or 5 grams of concentrate. But all in all, as far as bills go, it's the only one in town right now. It's the only game in town. And so if you want to see adult use on the 2024 ballot, then this is the initiative that's actually going to, get it done. I would add, we're going to invite Kim Rivers to come on the show to talk more about it and talk more about the motivations behind it. But I think it's important that we all take a look at and see what's happening. In addition, there is a home grow amendment in the works that's coming down the pipeline. And so having both of these amendments run concurrently and getting both of them on the 2024 ballot is going to be vital, because as we've seen, Representative Lerner has shown us, trying to get bills passed, even common sense bills, even in a bipartisan nature, is very difficult in the current political climate. And all in all, it's going to be up to us, the voters, to once again do the jobs that our representatives don't want to do. And that's to legalize it.
And if you want to legalize it, you should go to our Halloween events.
There you go.
Absolutely. So Friday, the 20, Carlos, is actually, I believe, the 28th
What?
of October.
The wrong date.
Yeah, you got the wrong date on the flyer. It's the 28th. It's Friday, October 28th at the Stone Soup Company, 7 to 11. We're going to have a costume contest. VIP members get a 1-year membership. VIP tickets, you get a 1-year membership at Suncoast Normal, as well as a goodie bag. And we're going to have an awesome time in Ybor City. Definitely come on out. This is our second Halloween event. We had to put a stop to it because of the pandemic, but we're back with our official Halloween party, and encourage folks to come on out and have a good time. So
we're posting in the chat the link to the event.
And, and Jason, feel free to grab your private jet and head on up here to Ybor City. I did promise you a tour of all the microbrews here in Tampa Bay, which we're very proud of.
I'm gonna come take you up on that offer the next time I'm in town, Gary.
And a big thank you to both of our guests for being here today.
Thank you guys for having us. Representative Leonard, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for the subscription. I hope you enjoy. And if you check out our last Friday episode, the October 7th episode, we went into a deep dive in regards to President Biden's recent announcement, dedicated the full first half hour of the show to strictly just talking about that one issue.
We'll do. And thanks again for having me.